you're up.
Good evening. Welcome to ongoing election coverage by Town Meeting Television. My name is Bridget Higdon. I'm the managing editor at the Essex Reporter. This is one of many forums being brought to you in advance of local elections and town meeting on the first Tuesday in March. Town meeting is traditionally where voters weigh in on local government representation, municipal budgets, school budgets, and local ballot items. All candidates on the ballot are invited to participate in town meeting TV election forums. Tonight, we'll be hearing about the Essex municipal budget as well as its local ballot items. Town meeting election forums introduce you to community decision makers and connect you with the issues that shape your local community. If you are watching this live, we welcome your questions at 802-862-3966. Again, that's 802-862-3966. You can watch Town Meeting TV on Comcast, channel 1087, Burlington Telecom channels 17 and 217, as well as online at Town Meeting TV's YouTube page. I'm going to turn it over now to Deputy Town Manager Greg Dugan and Essex Select Board Chair Andy Watts. They've got a presentation for us here this evening. Thank you for joining.
All right, thanks for having us. Greg, go ahead and bring up the presentation. So we'll be talking about the FY23 budget for the town of Essex. There we go. The proposed budget, I should say, to be voted on March 1st. Go forward, Greg. Okay, before the budget was developed, the select board was asked to provide its goals for the budget. There were four that were brought up. The first being the continued funding for equity initiatives and mental health support. Within that category, the budget does include a $30,000 appropriation for our equity committee. We've also are continuing to fund board stipends. We've started this fiscal year, actually just recently, providing stipends for all of our committee volunteers to help with to try to diversify who we have on the boards. Greg, I think you accidentally went forward one. So you know, folks can afford to have a babysitter if they, childcare if they need it, those kind of things. So we're continuing that. Also, we've added funding for our the Essex Community Justice Center, and we are creating a community affairs liaison within our police department, within the police budget, and we'll have more discussion about that on a future slide. Next thing was to consider how to address climate change in our programs. We are purchasing 3 police vehicles this year. All of them will be either hybrid or electric vehicles. So that's what we're doing in that regard. We wanted to minimize the financial impact of separation. There's a potential that the village of Essex Junction will be separating from the town. There's a bill before the legislature right now to address a new charter for the potentially for the city of Essex Junction. So the remaining portion of the town, we're trying to understand what we can do to try to minimize the impact. The biggest thing that we've done at this point is to eliminate one of the positions in the manager's office. We'll have numbers about that later, but that's the biggest change in that category at this point. Then the last thing on this list was to address the impact of separation by continuing work toward tax equity. Over the past several years, we've been moving portions of the village budget into the town budget so that the village expenditures were funded by town taxes rather than just by some of the village town expenditures were funded by town taxes rather than simply by the village. We were hoping to continue that effort in case separation doesn't happen, for one, and the other is also, interestingly, the more money we move into this year's budget, the less we'll have to move into it later if separation does occur. So it was kind of a smoothing effect for the transition, and also to continue the goodwill that we had been working with the village on moving more and more of their budgets into the town. But unfortunately, none of that has happened. There aren't any new efforts in place in this budget. But some of the existing measures will remain in place for this transition year. And we'll talk more about that as well. So, okay, go ahead, Greg, move on. Some highlights on for the general fund is we're using $431,000 of fund balance. This is leftover funds from previous years. To offset some of the tax increase. There is a larger than usual tax increase this year. I'll go through those numbers in a later slide. So we're using some fund balance to smooth that out. Also changes in our finance department, and then the vehicle costs in the police department. Typically we only buy 2 vehicles a year for the police department. This is a 3-vehicle year, so we're buying the 3rd vehicle using fund balance rather than adding it to the overall budget. There's a variety of staffing changes. I mentioned we're adding the community affairs liaison. What we've done there is we've taken a vacant patrol position and converted it into an administrative position with the function of community affairs liaison. We eliminated 1 management position, but added an administrative support assistant to the manager. Previously, the assistant to the manager was a village employee. So when we've, as part of getting ready to potentially separate, the shared management has ended, and so the assistant to the manager position, we need to replace that because it will no longer have anybody in that position after separation. Actually, I misstated that. Shared management is ending regardless of whether separation has ended, or will end regardless of whether separation occurs. So that's the other reason that we need to hire somebody there. We've added 2 40-hour per week daytime per diem firefighters to help with our emergency response. That was a request from our fire chief. This one went back and forth, and this is where we ended up with it. I think will definitely help our ability to satisfy the needs of the community for emergency service. This is the first full year of an economic development position, which we established in the current fiscal year. In fact, that individual was just recently hired. So it's a full year for that. It's a full year of part-time work for this person. Again, started very recently and will continue into next year. We're also adding a full-time Parks and Rec tech position, which will be shared between Parks and Public Works. There's some big increases associated with the county and regional and health and human services to the tune of $228,912. I'll touch on those a little bit more when we get into some specifics on the numbers. One other thing we've done in this budget, we've moved this police specific insurance costs to the police department costing center. This is because if separation occurs, we have an agreement in place with the village to provide, will be the city, to provide police services under contract. So in order to make sure all of the costs are contained within the police budget, we've moved those costs in there. And a lot of the other changes are tied to the potential separation. I'll touch on those as we get to them and talk about some of the amounts associated with those. Next slide, Greg. Okay, so services that are consolidated at this point, we have a common police department which supports the entire town, including the village. Our senior bus and senior programs are available to all town and village residents. Our clerk, we share a clerk's office between the village and the town. Our assessor is common. We do have a common information technology, IT department. These ones with asterisks on them are services that are going to start separating during FY23 in anticipation of the formation of the city of Essex Junction. So IT, stormwater, Highway, public works, administration and paving, then tax billing, collecting, those we're going to start moving apart. The four at the top will remain in place at least for some time. The police contract is expected to be fairly long-term. And then we're still working out the details of the other three. Though the assessor is going to be, will be in place. We're anticipating that the town will be in a position to require a reassessment here over in the next few years. So the assessor is going to remain common until that process is completed. But the senior programs in the clerk's office, we're still in discussions about how to, how long to share those into the future. Okay, moving forward. The wastewater treatment plant is owned by the Village of Essex Junction, will then be owned by the city if there's a separation. There's a tri-town agreement. There's a separate agreement that deals with the wastewater treatment plant. Williston is part of it, as is Essex Junction and the town of Essex. Essex Rescue is a shared service. It's not a municipal service. Essex Rescue is an independent nonprofit. Green Mountain Transit and Chittenden County Regional Planning Services, those are regional entities that we have representatives on their boards, but they're not strictly, they're not town municipal services, but they are continue to be shared in the FY23 budget. The Essex Rescue, Green Mountain Transit, and CCRPC will be paid for through the town budget. Next slide. Okay, services that no longer we share. We are eliminating the shared manager, the unified town and village manager. The current contract for that closes on February 25th. I believe is the date. And so beyond that point, the town and the village will have their own management. Finance administrative services are also being separated in the fairly short term, and then human resources and benefits administration ends concurrent with the shared management position as well. Fire department alignment, we had been working to try to align the pay structure for the two fire departments that serve the community, one being the town fire department and one being the village. Those in the FY23 budget are going slightly separate ways based on the preference of the fire chiefs for the two departments. So we're no longer working to keep those aligned, and we're letting each community do what they believe is best for their departments. And then recreation department alignment, we had the two recreation departments both located as 75 Maple. That's coming to an end. The Essex Parks and Rec has moved back out to 81, moved to 81 Main again. And so going forward, they won't be sharing a location, but there's still discussion about access to recreation programs on either side. Through FY23, village residents will continue to have the same access they've always had. Nothing will change with regard to access to programs in FY23. Okay, next slide. This came together in a funny order. Okay, new programs for public safety. Essex Rescue is adding in additional ambulance coverage because of need. So our contribution or requested contribution to Essex Rescue is increasing by $164,000. It's a pretty substantial increase that they've asked for, but it's the first of four that they've warned us they're asking for. That full increase will be paid for by out of the town budget this year. In future years, if the village separates, it will be on a per diem basis or per capita basis. I'm sorry. So that those approximately half will be paid by each. The two per diem firefighters I mentioned, we've added to ensure daytime coverage. That's just under 90,000 was the adder there. We're continuing to fund our our justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion work. Again, the community affairs liaison in the police department. I mentioned the economic development coordinator. This is be the first full year of a part-time coordinator for that, and then the full-time parks and parks and maintenance tech we shared between parks and public works. So it's the big enhancements. Okay, so the FY23 budget, the total proposed budget is 16.68 million. It's just under a $7,500,000 increase over the current fiscal year, which is a 4.7% budget increase. The amount we'll collect in taxes is a 5.1% increase. The estimated tax rate increase that a taxpayer will see is 4%, which is higher than we typically have supported. Typically, we're in the closer to 3%, but this is I think a unique year given the need to do some work to start the transition work associated with separation. There's some nuances with regard to why the numbers are different between the tax levy increase and the tax rate increase. It's related to non-tax revenue. Some of our revenue comes from places other than taxes, and things are shifting around there. We're anticipating a 1% grand list increase that will offset some of the additional costs as well. Go ahead. In order of the biggest increases, or the increases in the budget appropriations, which are Essex Rescue, Green Mountain Transit, and County Tax. Those are separate entities that are not municipally operated, managed, that we have to contribute to, or that we do contribute to. Our regular personnel costs, including benefits, is about just under 100,000. The part of the agreement with the consolidation work that we've been doing is the village highway budget gets folded into the town budget, and they buy a memorandum of understanding or an agreement that we have in place. They can increase their budget by up to 6% without objection from the select board. So this is within that, and so that's the I guess in the category of increasing tax equity. This is probably the biggest, one of the bigger pieces, separate line item pieces, where the town is covering village expenses within the town budget. Vehicle purchases is at 74K. Stormwater maintenance, 58,000. Our insurances are up. We did, as I mentioned, we're funding justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion work, including the stipends is just under 45K. Our professional services are up. This is hiring outside folks to do work for us. Election expenses are up as well, with mailing ballots to every active voter. That those expenses have gone up considerably. We have a $22,000 transfer to capital, and then the remaining increases of smaller items that all add up eventually 61,488. So the total increase, as I said, was just under 750,000 for the budget. Next slide, Greg. Okay, so this one I was tripped up on when I first read through it, but the reason that it says the total salary change is 75,000, but then when you look at the first bullet below that, it says there's $157,000 increase because of new positions. But when you get down to the third budget, it says there's a net decrease of 100,000 because we have our longstanding public works director is retiring. And so there are puts and takes on this that in an aggregate add up to the 75,000 of salary change and the 23,600 of benefits change. So again, we're adding the new positions, which is the fire department per diem And Greg, that FTE listed here, is this the assistant to the manager? Or is that the?
Oh, I am drawing a blank. I had it before, so I put it in there, and that was. I think you're right. I think it's the assistant.
Yeah, I think it's assistant to the manager. Yeah. I mentioned our public works director is retiring.
Andy, it's the parks and maintenance tech position.
Parks and maintenance tech position. Right. Okay. And then in the police department, we are generally where we underspend the most is in staffing our police department, as everyone is experiencing. It's very difficult to hire police officers right now. So we fully fund our police department, but often are unable to fill the positions. And so that the leftover funds from that get swept into fund balance, and then we have to, we have a policy around how we deal with that. And so in this year, we're funding it at 94% to account for vacancies. This offsets some of the salary and benefit costs. So then the net reduction for the police for salaries is 20,000 relative to last year. So I think that's that. Okay, next one.
Andy, I'll interject for just a moment to remind folks that we are welcoming questions. They can call in at 802-862-3966. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Yeah, this next slide goes through a little bit more of those details. I won't go through it line by line because we're probably getting pressed for time here. So this details out the gives and takes on the prior slide. Go ahead, Greg, to the next. And so the estimated tax impact, current general tax rate is 0.5285. We're estimating it's going to go to 5.497, which is a 4% increase, which on the example we use is a $280,000 home. The increase on the $280,000 home would be $59.36 for the year. Again, this assumes the grand list growth of 1% and the fact that we're using $431,000 from leftover funds to offset some of the tax rate increase. So if your home is worth more or less than there's 280,000, you can scale it up or down to get an estimate of what your tax rate increase would be. Okay, next, Greg, is that okay? And then this last slide is a pie chart that shows where the money goes. The police department is the largest component of that. And oh yeah, right down in the lower left, it says the total estimated taxes for that $280,000 home is $1,595. And so then this chart breaks out where those $1,595 would go. Again, the police is the biggest chunk. Public works is the next biggest piece, and then general government, which includes the select board, the manager, the administrative staff for all of the departments. And then beyond that, it goes to culture and recreation, which includes parks and rec, and then smaller and smaller pieces after that. So this is where the detail of where the money goes. And next slide, I think this might be it. Yep. All right. Thank you. So happy to take any questions.
Does not seem like we have anybody on the line at this time. So I will take a moment to ask you both, maybe talk a little bit about things that the select board or the town would have liked to have put in the budget, but have sort of cut back at this, in terms of making proposing a reasonable budget to the taxpayers this year. So what were those conversations like?
Oh, what did we not include?
One of the big ones that comes to my mind, Andy went over the 2 per diem firefighters. Our fire chief has asked for 4 per diem firefighters. That's a matter of staffing. The Essex Fire Department right now is totally volunteer based. Volunteers are compensated for their time when they show up for respond to calls. But they have to come from their day jobs. They have to leave their homes on the weekends. They have to wake up in the middle of the night to come to these calls. So by having the per diems included in the budget, it'll ensure that there's at least 2 staff at the fire department during the day, every 5 days a week. So ideally, it would be more than that for the sake of public safety. Excuse me, for the sake of public safety, but these 2 per diems are a step in that direction, and trying to make sure that we can provide rescue services, safety services to the community in a more reliable basis.
Yeah, Greg, you're right. You said this was the original request was 4 for a full year. Was that right? And then it moved around quite a bit in our discussion. It went to 1 for half a year at one point, and then we had a lot of discussion about the risk of not having being able to support what that's intended to support. So then it went to a half a year with 2, and then I think we pulled it back fully to the full year with 2. We didn't go all the way back to 4 for a full year, but yeah, there was some give and take on that, Bridget. We had a lot of discussion about that and really wanted to make sure that we were providing at least the minimum for the community safety.
Absolutely, sort of landed in the middle there for a compliment.
Yeah.
Great.
Capital funding is another one. We have a capital tax, 2 cents, which is outside of the operating budget. But we do have transfers in the operating budget to capital. We always would love to be able to set some more money aside. It's planning for the future. It's making sure our roads stay paved, our buildings are maintained, our vehicles are on a good replacement schedule. But it's also one of those areas where we have to maybe not fully fund it to be able to present a palatable tax increase and a palatable budget to the community. But it is something that we want to look at in the future going forward with how to best fund our capital expenses.
We've got just a couple minutes left here. If there's anybody watching who does have a question, you're welcome to chime in. Might be nice, Greg, to put up that slide one more time about the tax impact on the voter with the percent increase and the dollar amount.
This one, Bridget, or one of the previous ones?
I think the previous one. Yeah. Let's see that one more time. Yes, great.
There it is.
Yep. So we're talking about a 4% increase over last year. And they've got this laid out here for a homeowner with a $280,000 home.
And if I could just clarify that $280,000, that is the assessed value that you see on your tax bill. It's not, you go to Zillow and type in the value of your home, it's probably going to be higher than that. But here's the tax bill assessment, which the town has on record.
Great.
We do have a call. Caller, you go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, I'm just curious how you figure you're going to save $100,000 with the Public Works Director retiring? Thank you.
So that's a combination of salary and benefits. And we're promoting from within. We're not hiring to replace. So
Our works, I'm sorry, Andy, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's not really an elimination of a position, but it's the individual that's been in that job for a long time is retiring. The salary and benefits come out, and then we have 2 individuals we're promoting to fill the work that was done by that one position.
Okay, thank you. I just wondered because I know that I saw a report where the Public Works Director was very concerned about replacing some positions that were up. So thank you.
Very much. I think that is just about our time here. So thank you very much, both to Greg and to Andy for joining us tonight. And thank you for everybody online who's watching or who called in. You can find this and more forums at www.ch17.tv. We ask you, please don't forget to vote before March 1st. Early voting by mail is available by contacting your local town clerk's office. Polls will also be open on March 1st from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Thank you very much for watching. And have a good evening.
And to clarify, we're mailing to all active voters. So